Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're the place you come to get this sort of foundational knowledge on complex topics, straight from the source material.
Yep, we wade through it so you don't have to.
Exactly. And today, we are doing a deep dive into, well, a specific political communication strategy. It's used by progressive groups, and it's known as the race-class narrative, RCN for short.
Or sometimes you'll see RCGN, that's race, class, gender narrative. They often fold gender in explicitly.
Right. So RCN or RCGN, and this isn't just like theory, is it? The sources describe it differently.
Oh yeah, very much so. They call it an empirically tested narrative, which means they've done polling, focus groups, the works.
Okay. And tested for what? What's the main goal here?
Well, fundamentally, it's designed very specifically to counter what the sources call dog whistle racism in political messaging from the other side.
Dog whistle racism. We should probably define that quickly.
Yeah. The sources basically describe it as coded language, stuff that signals racial bias to some voters without using overtly racial terms, maybe talking about welfare queens back in the day, or certain ways of framing crime or immigration now.
Gotcha. Coded language to divide, so the RCN aims to neutralize that.
Exactly. And the ultimate goal is to build a cross-racial solidarity among voters, to bring people together despite those attempts to divide.
Okay, so for this deep dive, our mission is to really unpack the whole architecture of this RCN system. We want to understand, how it diagnoses the political problem, what core value it anchors itself to.
And crucially, how it advises people to actually apply this framework across all sorts of different policy areas, right?
Yeah, from things like corporate power all the way to voting rights. How does it aim to win support on those specific issues using this narrative?
So to get the architecture, we've got to start where they start. The diagnosis. What problem are they trying to solve?
Right.
And the sources are really direct about this. They say the opposition, their term, regularly uses racial fear as a tool.
A tool for what?
To exploit economic anxieties. That's the key link they make.
Okay. So connecting racial fear to money worries. How does that work, according to them?
It's basically a strategy of distraction and division. The idea is when people are feeling squeezed, maybe wages are stagnant, cost of living's up, they feel insecure.
Understandable.
Right. And instead of focusing that frustration on, say, economic policies or corporate behavior, the RCN argues the opposition uses this racial fear, this coded language.
The dog whistles.
Exactly. To redirect that anxiety. Turn people against each other, white working folks against black communities or maybe against immigrants.
And it also turns them against government itself.
That's a crucial part of the diagnosis, yeah. It undermines the idea that government can or should work for everyone, makes collective solutions seem impossible or undesirable.
Okay, so that's the mechanism. And they're specific about who gets scapegoated in this scenario.
Very specific. The sources name communities of color, new immigrants, black people, and they also explicitly mention transgender people.
So these groups are blamed for wider problems.
That's the accusation. Blame for problems the RCN framework says are actually created by, and I'm quoting here, self-interested politicians and their greedy corporate donors.
So it flips the script. It's not these groups causing the problems. It's this other, smaller group, politicians and donors.
Precisely. It tries to redirect anger away from the scapegoated groups and towards, well, the perceived economic elites and their political allies.
Okay, so if the diagnosis is division, scapegoating, fear, how does the RCN strategy propose to unify people? What's the common ground?
This is probably the most, surprising finding from their research, actually. They tested a lot of values, things you might expect, like justice, equality, community. And those polled okay, but they weren't resilient. When the opposition messaging, the divisive stuff came in, support for messages based on those values apparently dropped, especially among white audiences.
So what did work?
Freedom.
Freedom. Freedom.
Just freedom. Across race, age, party affiliation. The sources say testing showed freedom consistently ranked as the single most important American value.
Wow. That's kind of counterintuitive, maybe? Because freedom is a word you hear a lot from the very opposition this strategy is meant to counter.
Exactly. And that's why they insist on using it. The testing showed it was the only value strong enough to maintain that cross-racial support, even when faced with racially divisive attacks.
So using freedom is a strategic choice to hold the coalition together.
Yes. It allows them to frame the fight immediately. To, as they put it, draw a stark contrast. It's us, the people fighting to protect freedoms, versus them, the ones trying to take freedoms away.
And them is always defined as?
The politicians, the corporate interests, the ones using division. So every message has to come back to this idea. Freedom is under attack, and we need to unite to protect it.
Okay, that makes sense as a foundation. So how do they build on that? How do they actually construct the messages to build that solidarity? This is where the explicit race and gender part comes in, the RCGM.
Absolutely critical. According to the framework, they're really blunt about it. One source says, economic populism that does not mention race or gender cannot withstand our opposition's dog whistling.
Cannot withstand it. So ignoring race is seen as a vulnerability.
A major one. The argument is, if you don't talk about race and gender explicitly, you leave the door wide open for the opposition to come in, use those dog whistles, and just fracture the coalition. Turn it into like a zero-sum game between groups.
So mentioning race isn't just about inclusion, it's a defensive move.
It's framed as both. It's meant to engage people of color directly, show their specific concerns are part of the fight, while also keeping white listeners engaged by rooting it all in that shared universal value of freedom.
Okay, and the strategy gets tactical here, right? About how to respond immediately when scapegoating happens.
Yeah, define the we straight away. Don't let the division set in.
Can you give an example of how they suggest doing that?
Sure. So say the attack is focused on transgender people. The messaging advice is to immediately define the community defending freedom as, quote, people of all genders and races.
Ah, so you instantly place the targeted group inside the larger coalition.
Exactly. Makes them part of the is us fighting for freedom, not another.
And you see a similar pattern with immigration.
Yep. The language aims to include everyone, like saying the shared value, the shared community applies whether we were born here or chose to make this our home. Again, defining the we inclusively from the start.
So it counters the US versus them frame by creating a bigger OSIS.
That's the idea. But it's not just reactive. The sources are clear. Don't get bogged down just responding.
Right, they say don't get stuck reacting.
Yeah, and they even mention specific tactics the opposition uses, like the flood the zone tactic.
Flood the zone, what's that?
Basically throwing out tons of small, often contradictory controversies all at once. The goal is just to overwhelm, distract, keep communicators off balance and unable to focus on their core message, like the economy.
So it's like throwing chaff in the air.
Kind of. And the advice they give is pretty direct. When everything is bait, don't take the bait.
So instead of chasing every little thing,
You stick to your narrative. You proactively name what you are fighting for. And crucially, you name the opponent's strategy.
you call out the scapegoating itself.
Yes. The goal is to expose the opposition's strategic use of racism and transphobia as scapegoating. You draw the line for the audience. See? They're doing this to divide us, to distract us from the real problem, which affects all of us. You link the division back to the shared economic pain.
So the pattern seems to be state the shared value, freedom, name the opponent trying to take it, greedy few politicians, identify their tactic, division scapegoating, and then call for unity, the diverse many, as the solution.
That is the core loop. That's the engine, yes. It repeats across different issues.
Okay, let's look at those applications. How does this template play out on big economic issues? Cost of living, corporate power, stuff everyone feels.
Right. So here, the narrative directly connects that feeling of hardship, things costing more, wages not keeping up.
Yeah.
It connects it straight to corporations and the greedy politicians they pay for. That's the identified cause.
Not some vague economic force, but specific actors.
Very specific actors who, the narrative states, hold down our wages and raise our prices. Why? To take record profits for themselves and their billionaire backers.
And how is freedom defined in this economic context? It sounds less abstract here.
Much more tangible. Real freedom, according to the RCN application here, it means things like being able to demand better pay, care for our families, and retire in dignity.
So economic security is freedom.
That's the equation they make. And the argument is only by uniting across race and gender can regular people actually win that freedom back from the greedy few who are denying it.
Okay, let's shift to taxes, often a divisive issue. How does the RCN frame taxes and government revenue?
It uses that same core conflict structure. It contrasts the majority's value freedom to provide for your family, have good schools, safe communities with the actions of the greedy few.
And what are they doing?
They've rigged the rules, the narrative says, specifically to redirect resources. And they use really strong visual contrasts here.
Like what?
Claiming money is actively moved away from public things everyone needs, like classrooms, public parks, and funneled towards the elite's private luxuries. The sources literally say things like money going from our classrooms to their ballrooms and from our public parks to their private jets.
Wow, that's vivid. It makes the rigged rules idea very concrete.
Memorable, yeah. That's the goal.
How about something really charged, like gun violence prevention? How does this narrative apply there?
Safety gets framed as a fundamental freedom, the freedom to live without fear.
Okay.
And the narrative links the failure to pass, say, common sense gun safety laws directly to greedy politicians paid off by gun lobbyists. There's the opponent again.
Following the template.
Yeah.
And the division tactic.
The narrative claims these same politicians then try to distract us from their failures by blaming the very victims of gun violence.
Scapegoating again.
Right. So the shared value is clear. Freedom to be safe, for your family to be safe, when you leave the house, no matter our color or background. The opposition's actions, fueled by lobbyists and their divisive tactics, are presented as a direct threat to that freedom.
Makes sense. Okay, voting rights and elections. Feels fundamental.
It is. And the core belief here is simple. Voters pick our leaders. Politicians do not pick which voters to heed and which to silence. That's the starting principle.
And then the threat.
Efforts to create barriers to voting based on how you look, where you live, how much money you make, are framed as politicians trying to rule over us, not represent us.
And why would they do that, according to the narrative?
To maintain power and keep funneling wealth to their billionaire backers. It always circles back to that elite interest group.
So the solution proposed isn't just policy, it's
Collective action, unity. The message emphasizes joining together because the many can defeat the money. People power overcoming elite influence.
Finally, what about these more recent cultural battles? Things like the pushback against DEI initiatives or fights over teaching history. How does the RCN address those?
It connects the present moment directly to historical struggles for justice.
How so?
It explicitly invokes past movements,
Yep.
reminds the audience, our ancestors fought to integrate schools and guarantee voting rights, fought to build unions.
So it grounds the current fight in that legacy.
Exactly. It frames the current pushback against DEI or certain historical accounts as efforts by an authoritarian regime, strong language there, to divide us in order to roll back those hard-won freedoms and gains.
So it's not just a new fight, it's defending past progress.
Yes. The message is, progress is not guaranteed. It's always under threat from forces using division, and it requires that same unity to protect it.
Looking across all these examples, economics, taxes, guns, voting, culture wars, the pattern is incredibly consistent, isn't it?
It really is. It's a very disciplined framework. If you boil it down, the RCN narrative structure is always this kind of binary.
Yeah.
It's the many who are described as diverse, valuing freedom, versus the few.
And the few are.
The greedy corporate donors, the politicians they fund, sometimes framed as this authoritarian regime.
And their main weapon.
Always division, scapegoating based on race, gender, immigration status, etc. That's identified as the key tactic to maintain their power.
And the only way to counter it, according to this strategy,
Is solidarity. Cross-racial, cross-gender unity, coming together to protect that core value of freedom which belongs to everyone. That's the constant refrain.
it's definitely a dense system. Very structured, clearly designed to be repeatable. And as you said, the sources constantly hammer home this idea that the opposition seeks to take away these freedoms. Freedom is positioned as the ultimate stake.
Which sets up a really interesting dynamic, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, this whole progressive strategy is built on claiming and defining freedom. But as we noted, the opposition also uses the language of freedom constantly.
Right. So here's the thought I want to leave our listeners with, something to chew on as you hear these kinds of messages out in the world. If the RCN strategy identifies freedom as the key value for all voters and builds its entire structure around protecting it, how much does its success depend on getting there first, on successfully defining what freedom means in these contexts before the opposition does? It seems like there's a crucial battle over the very definition of that word, isn't there? Who gets to own freedom? That's the strategic space this narrative is trying to occupy. Something to think about.